The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with worried voices. Hundreds of beings from different worlds sat in their floating chairs, talking in hushed tones. The air felt heavy with fear and confusion. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Zektar, his blue skin darker than usual as he spoke to the crowd. "My fellow council members," Zektar said, his voice carrying across the silent hall, "we must talk about the human problem." A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. Everyone knew about the humans, but no one liked to speak of them. For 300 years, their space had been marked as forbidden. No ship was allowed to cross into their territory. No trade was permitted. No contact of any kind. The problem was simple. No one could remember why. Young Thais from the Kepler worlds raised her hand. Her green eyes were bright with curiosity. "Ambassador, with respect, perhaps it is time to question this old rule. The humans have been silent for centuries. Our long-range sensors show no movement in their space. No ships, no signals. Nothing." Murmurs of agreement came from several council members. Thebes continued, her voice growing stronger. "We bend our trade routes around their territory. It costs us billions of credits every year. Ships must travel extra weeks to avoid their borders. And for what? A dead zone that might be empty?" Commander Brix of the Titan fleet leaned forward. In his chair, his scarred face showed years of battle. "The young one speaks sense. My scouts report the same thing. Human space appears lifeless. Their worlds show no energy signatures. No city lights, no space traffic. They may have died out long ago." Zektar held up his four-fingered hand for silence. "The restriction exists for good reason. Our ancestors put it in place after the first contact with humans 3 centuries ago. The records from that time speak of great danger." "What records?" asked Dr. Velna, the council's chief historian. Her tentacles waved in frustration. "I have searched the archives for years. The files from that period are either missing or heavily damaged. All we have are warnings with no details." The ambassador's shoulders sagged. This was the heart of the problem. The old records spoke of humans as a threat so great that all the galaxy's races had agreed to avoid them completely, but time had worn away the details. Now they had only fear without understanding. "There are fragments," Zektar said slowly. "Mentions of human unpredictability, references to their violent nature, notes about technological developments that concerned our ancestors." "Fragments and rumors," scoffed Captain Ryan of the Border. "Patrol. I have patrolled near human space for 50 years. I have never seen a single human ship cross their boundary. They keep to themselves completely. What threat could they possibly pose?" The debate continued for hours. The younger council, members wanted to send a small expedition to investigate. The older ones insisted the ancient warnings be respected, but as the day wore on, curiosity began to win over caution. Meanwhile, far from the council chambers, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the monitoring station Aurora 7. The station hung in space at the edge of human territory, invisible to alien sensors. Jake was 45 years old with gray streaks in his brown hair. He had been watching the alien ships gather at the border for 3 days. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Clark, pointed at the main screen. "Captain, we're now tracking 52 ships. Mixed fleet. They're definitely planning something." Jake nodded calmly. He had expected this day would come eventually. The aliens were getting bold. Their ships were moving closer to the boundary. Markers testing human response times. Some had even sent probes across the line before turning back. "Any response from Earth Command?" Jake asked. "Admiral Kane wants a full report every 6 hours. She's mobilizing the Home Defense Fleet." "Ben," replied Jake, almost smiled at that. The aliens had no idea what they were walking into. If they thought the Home Defense Fleet was all humanity had to offer, they were in for quite a surprise. On the alien side of the border, Commodore Vexhan studied the sensor readings from his flagship. The human boundary was marked by a series of simple beacons broadcasting warnings in dozens of languages. The message was always the same. "This is human space. Do not enter. This is your only warning." Commodore, his science officer reported, our deep scans show no signs of human activity beyond the boundary. Whatever patrol ships they once had appear to be gone. Vexahan was an experienced commander. He had fought pirates, explored unknown systems, and made first contact with dozens of new species. The mystery of human space had always bothered him. How could an entire civilization simply vanish? Perhaps they retreated to their inner worlds, suggested his first officer commander, Delra. Many species become isolationist as they develop advanced technology. They might simply have no interest in galactic affairs. Back on Aurora 7, Jake watched the alien fleet's movements with professional interest. His sensors could track every ship, monitor their communications, and predict their next moves. The aliens had good technology, but it was centuries behind what humans now possessed. Lieutenant, send a message to Earth, Jake ordered. Tell Admiral Kane that our guests are almost ready to make their move. Request permission to begin the welcoming committee preparations. Ben typed the message and sent it through quantum channels the aliens couldn't detect. Within minutes, the reply came back. 3 simple words. Permission granted. Proceed. Jake stood up and walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum window, he could see the alien ships gathering in formation. They looked impressive with their bright hulls and energy weapons. Once, 300 years ago, ships like these had frightened humanity into hiding. But that was then. Humanity had used their time in isolation well. Very well indeed. The aliens were about to learn why no one dared cross into human space, and Jake Morrison had a front-row seat to watch their education begin. The vote in the Galactic Council was close, but curiosity won. 52 ships from 12 different worlds formed an expedition fleet. Commodore Vexhan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dawn, watching as his ships moved into formation. This was the largest fleet to approach human space in 3 centuries. All ships report ready, Commodore, his communications officer announced. The bridge crew was tense but excited. They were about to solve one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. Vexhan gave the order. Cross the boundary. Maintain formation and keep sensors active. We go in peace, but we go prepared. The fleet moved forward, passing the ancient warning, beacons that had kept the galaxy away for so long. As they crossed into human territory, every sensor on every ship strained to detect signs of life. The space around them seemed empty and cold. Sir, the science officer reported, I'm detecting a single small vessel approaching from the inner system. It appears to be alone. On the main screen, a tiny ship appeared. It was sleek and white, no bigger than an alien shuttle. Compared to the massive warships of the expedition fleet, it looked like a toy. Are they serious? Commander Delra asked with a laugh. One small ship against our entire fleet? The human vessel sent a signal on standard diplomatic frequencies. The voice that came through the speakers was clear and friendly. It belonged to a young woman who spoke perfect galactic standard language. Greetings, alien vessels. This is Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez of the Human Defense Force. Welcome to human space. I am here to escort you to a meeting location where our leaders can speak with you properly. Vexhan was surprised by the politeness. He had expected either silence or threats. Instead, this human woman sounded like she was inviting them to a social gathering. Human vessel, this is Commodore Vexhan of the Galactic Expedition Fleet. We come in peace to re-establish contact between our peoples. We accept your offer of escort. Amy's ship, the Nighthawk, turned and began leading the alien fleet deeper into human space. The aliens followed eagerly, their confidence growing with each passing hour. If this tiny vessel represented the best humanity could offer, their ancient fears seemed foolish. Commodore, the tactical officer reported, our sensors show no other human ships in the area. No defense platforms, no hidden bases. This sector appears to be completely undefended. Vexhan nodded, but something felt wrong. An experienced commander learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming warnings. Why would the humans send just one ship? Where were their defenses? Why were they being so cooperative? Amy Rodriguez smiled as she piloted her ship through space. Her instruments showed readings the aliens couldn't see. All around them, hidden in what appeared to be empty space, The real human fleet waited patiently. Hundreds of ships sat cloaked just beyond alien detection range. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids tracked every movement of the expedition fleet. "Control, this is Rodriguez." She spoke into her quantum communicator. "Package is being delivered as planned. The fish are following the bait nicely." "Confirmed, Rodriguez," came the reply from Admiral Kane on Earth. "Admiral Hayes is in position with the defense fleet. Bring them to the designated coordinates." Amy's destination was an unremarkable asteroid field in the outer system. To alien sensors, it looked like nothing more than floating rocks and ice. The perfect place for a quiet diplomatic meeting between old enemies who might become new friends. "Human vessel," Vexhan called over the radio. "This asteroid field seems an unusual choice for a meeting location. All the best meeting spots are taken," Amy replied with humor in her voice. "Don't worry, Commodore, you'll find it very educational." As the alien fleet moved deeper into the asteroid field, their sensors began picking up strange readings. Energy signatures that didn't match anything in their databases. Gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist. Electromagnetic patterns that seemed almost alive. "Commodore," the science officer said nervously, "these readings don't make sense. Some of these asteroids are showing internal power sources, and the gravitational fields are all wrong." Vexhan felt his blood turn cold. "Emergency stop, all ships halt immediately." But it was too late. Amy Rodriguez activated a simple command on her control panel. "Command, this is Rodriguez. Package delivered. They're all yours now." The asteroid field came alive. What the aliens had thought were floating rocks suddenly blazed with light. Massive ships uncloaked themselves, revealing hulls that seemed to bend light around them. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as debris powered up with energy readings that broke alien sensors. The small human escort ship began to change. Its hull expanded and shifted, unfolding like a flower made of metal and energy. Within seconds, Amy's tiny shuttle had become a ship larger than the alien flagship. "Don't be alarmed," Amy's voice came over the radio, still calm and friendly. "We just thought you might be more comfortable if we appeared less threatening during the escort phase." Commodore Vexhan stared at his tactical display in shock. His 52-ship fleet was now surrounded by over 300 human vessels. Ships that moved without visible engines. Weapons that charged with power levels that shouldn't be possible. Technology that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. "This is impossible," Commander Delra whispered. "Our sensors showed empty space. How did they hide so many ships?" From the largest human vessel, a new voice spoke. It was deep and calm, belonging to an older man who radiated authority. "Commodore Vexhan, this is Admiral Frank Hayes of the U.S. Human Defense Fleet. You and your ships are now our guests. Please power down your weapons and prepare to receive our diplomatic party. We have much to discuss, and I think you'll find our conversation very enlightening." Vexhan looked around his bridge at the frightened faces of his crew. 3 centuries ago, the galaxy had feared humanity enough to ban all contact with them. Now he was beginning to understand why. The humans hadn't disappeared or died out. They had been waiting, preparing, becoming something far beyond what any alien species had imagined possible. The expedition to solve the mystery of human space had succeeded. But the answer they found was more terrifying than the question had ever been. Admiral Frank Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance. The ship was so massive that it had its own small moon orbiting around it. Hayes was 60 years old with silver hair and calm gray eyes. He had been preparing for this moment his entire career. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," he ordered. His voice was steady and polite, like a teacher speaking to nervous students. On his main screen, Commodore Vexhan appeared. The alien commander's blue skin had turned pale with shock. Behind him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to understand what they were seeing. "Commodore Vexhan," Hayes said with a slight smile. "Welcome to human space. I hope your journey was comfortable. Please power down your weapons and prepare to receive our diplomatic team." Vexhan's pride was hurt by the trap. His fleet had walked blindly into human hands like children following candy. The shame burned in his chest. "Admiral Hayes, you have deceived us. This was supposed to be a peaceful meeting. It is peaceful, Hayes replied. No one has been harmed. Your ships are intact. We simply wanted to ensure you understood the situation before we began talking. Commander Delra leaned toward Vexhan and whispered urgently, Sir, we outnumber them. Our weapons are charged and ready. We should fight our way out while we can. Vexhan nodded. His fleet was trapped, but they were not helpless. 52. Warships with the best weapons in the galaxy should be able to break through any blockade. All ships, this is Vexhan, he announced on the fleet channel. Open fire, target the largest human vessels. We fight our way out together. The alien fleet opened fire at once. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced out toward the human ships. Plasma cannons that could crack planets discharged their deadly loads. Missile swarms that could destroy space stations streaked through the void. The humans did not move to avoid the attack. They did not raise shields or take defensive positions. They simply waited as the alien weapons reached them. The energy beams struck the human ships and simply stopped. The deadly light bent around the hulls like water flowing around stones. The plasma bolts hit the armor and were absorbed, their energy feeding back into the human power systems. The missiles exploded harmlessly against fields that turned destruction into fuel. Impossible, Delra whispered. Nothing can absorb that much firepower. Hayes watched the display with patience. Commodore, your weapons are impressive. 300 years ago, they would have been quite dangerous to us, but we have learned much since then. A new figure appeared on the alien bridge without warning. She was a human woman in her 30s with short brown hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple white uniform with no weapons or armor. The alien security team reached for their guns, but she held up her hand. Please don't be alarmed, she said calmly. I am Dr. Sarah Blake, chief scientist for this expedition. I came to explain what you just witnessed. How did you get aboard my ship? Vexhan demanded. Our shields are raised. Our security systems are active. Your shields work by stopping matter and energy from crossing your hull boundary, Sarah explained patiently. We learned to step around such barriers centuries ago. Space has more dimensions than you realize. She walked to the alien tactical display and touched it gently. The screen changed to show readings that made the alien crew step back in fear. It displayed the true power levels of the human fleet, numbers so high they seemed like mistakes. Your weapons work by applying force to matter, Sarah continued. But we learned to convince matter that force is optional. Your sensors detect ships by looking for mass and energy signatures, but we learned to exist in ways your instruments cannot perceive. Admiral Hayes' voice came through the communications system. Dr. Blake, please show our guests the basic demonstration. Sarah nodded and spoke into her wrist communicator. Rodriguez, if you would be so kind. Outside the alien ship, Amy Rodriguez's vessel began to change again. But this time, instead of growing larger, it seemed to fold in on itself. The ship twisted through dimensions the aliens couldn't see, turning inside out and backwards through space. When the transformation finished, Amy's ship had become a perfect sphere of light. It pulsed gently, and with each pulse, it grew larger. Soon it was the size of a moon, then a planet. Then it stopped growing and began to spin. Size, shape, and density are just variables we learned to control, Sarah explained. We thought you might prefer us to appear less intimidating during first contact. The sphere of light suddenly split into 1,000 smaller lights. Each light became a ship identical to Amy's original vessel. The 1,000 ships moved in perfect formation, dancing through space in patterns that defied physics. Then, just as quickly, they merged back into the single sphere. The sphere folded back into Amy's normal ship, which resumed its position near the alien fleet. That was just one of our smaller vessels, Sarah said gently. Admiral Hayes commands over 300 ships in this fleet alone. Each one can do what you just witnessed, and much more. Vexhan sank into his command chair. His understanding of reality was crumbling. What are you? He whispered. We are what you feared we might become, Sarah replied. 300 years ago, your people contacted us. They found us primitive and dangerous. They were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they thought. She gestured toward the view screen, which now showed the true extent of the human presence. ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in local space, cities that floated between realities. You were afraid we would conquer the galaxy through war, Sarah continued. Instead, we conquered the universe through understanding. We learned to work with reality instead of fighting against it. Admiral Hayes appeared on the screen again. Commodore, your fleet is welcome to leave at any time. But first we would like to show you something that we think you should take back to your people. Consider it a gift from humanity to the Galactic Council. Commander Paul Martinez led the alien delegation through the human city ship New Geneva. Paul was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. He walked slowly, allowing the aliens time to absorb what they were seeing. The ship was impossibly large inside. Forests grew in controlled gravity fields that let trees spiral through the air. Lakes floated in midair, their water held in perfect spheres by invisible forces. Above them, the ceiling showed real-time images of distant galaxies as if they were walking through space itself. Commodore Vexhan struggled to understand what he was seeing. This ship violates every law of physics. How can it be larger inside than outside? Space is more flexible than your people realize, Paul explained patiently. We learned to fold it like paper. This ship exists in 17 different dimensions at the same time. They passed through a market where humans traded goods with beings the aliens didn't recognize. Creatures made of pure energy bargained with people who seemed to be made of living crystal. Children played games that involved moving through solid walls. Who are those beings? Asked Dr. Velna, her tentacles waving nervously. I don't recognize their species. They're human, Paul replied simply. Some of us chose to evolve in different directions. When you can control matter and energy, at the basic level, the shape of your body becomes a choice rather than a limitation. They entered a great library that stretched beyond sight in all directions. The walls were covered with books, data crystals, and storage devices the aliens couldn't identify. At the center sat an elderly woman with silver hair and warm brown eyes. This is librarian Helen Foster, Paul said. She maintains our historical records. Helen, our guest would like to know the truth about first contact. Helen smiled and gestured for them to sit in chairs that formed themselves from the floor. The truth is simpler than you might think. 300 years ago, your people did contact us. The meeting did not go well. She waved her hand, and images appeared in the air above them. The aliens saw their own ancestors' ships approaching Earth. They watched as diplomatic parties met with human leaders in great halls. Your ancestors were not evil, Helen continued. They were practical. They had built a galactic civilization based on order and control. They saw humanity as a problem that needed solving. The images showed the discussions between humans and aliens. The alien diplomats spoke of humanity's violent history, their unpredictable nature, their tendency toward rapid technological development. They offered us two choices, Helen said. We could accept protectorate status, allowing alien oversight of our development. Or we could face military action to prevent us from becoming a threat to galactic stability. Vexhan leaned forward. What did your people choose? Helen's smile grew wider. We chose option 3. We asked for time to consider the offer. 50 years to prepare our answer. Your ancestors agreed, thinking we might use the time to become more civilized. The images changed to show human activity during those 50 years. Massive construction projects. Scientific research that progressed at incredible speed. Social changes that transformed human society from the ground up. We did become civilized, Helen said. Just not in the way your ancestors expected. A new voice spoke from behind them. We became something they couldn't control. The aliens turned to see General Robert Chen entering the library. He was a strong-built man with steady hands and alert eyes. Unlike the others, he wore a military uniform that seemed to be made of shifting energy. General Chen commands our dimensional defense forces, Paul explained. Dimensional defense? Commander Delra asked. The galaxy your people know is just one layer of reality, Chen said. We learned to build cities in parallel universes. We established colonies in dimensions where time moves differently. We created armies in realities where the laws of physics work according to our needs. He gestured, and the library around them became transparent. Through the walls, the aliens could see the true extent of New Geneva. The city ship extended through dozens of dimensions, each layer containing millions of humans living lives the aliens couldn't imagine. While you believed we controlled a few dozen star systems, Chen continued, we actually spread through thousands of realities. Your long-range sensors see only what we allow them to see. Helen activated another display. This one showed the current state of human expansion. Red dots marked human presence throughout the galaxy, not just in their restricted zone but everywhere. Hidden bases in asteroid fields, cities built inside gas giant atmospheres, settlements in the empty space between stars. We have been watching you for 3 centuries, Helen said gently. Learning your languages, studying your cultures, monitoring your technological development. We know about every major decision made by the Galactic Council for the past 200 years. Vexhan felt sick. You've been spying on us. We've been protecting you, Chen corrected. Do you think the Keller War ended by accident? Do you believe the Void Plague just disappeared on its own? How do you think the Titan Rebellion was stopped so quickly? The alien delegation exchanged shocked looks. These were major events in galactic history. Wars that had threatened entire civilizations. Disasters that had been resolved through what seemed like incredible luck. Every time the galaxy faced a crisis that could have destroyed your civilization, Helen said, humanity helped solve it. We worked from the shadows, providing the right technology at the right moment, ensuring the right people made the right decisions. But why? Dr. Velna asked. If you're so powerful, why hide? Why not rule the galaxy directly? Paul answered, this time. Because we remember what it was like to be afraid. Your ancestors were right to fear us, but not because we were violent. They were right, because we had the potential to become something beyond their ability to understand or control. He gestured toward the images of galactic history. We chose to become gardeners instead of conquerors. We tend the galaxy like a garden, helping civilizations grow and develop naturally. Someday, perhaps you will develop enough to join us as equals rather than subjects. General Chen stepped forward. The restricted zone around our territory isn't a prison keeping us in. It's a nursery keeping the rest of the galaxy safe while you grow. When your people are ready for true contact with what we've become, the barriers will come down. Helen stood up from her chair. Until then, we wait. We watch. We help when we can. And we hope that someday the galaxy will be ready for the truth about what humanity has become. The alien delegation sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything they had learned. The galaxy they thought they knew was an illusion. The humans they had feared were their secret protectors. And the restricted zone they had come to investigate was actually a gift, giving them space to develop without interference from beings who had transcended the normal limits of existence. Ambassador Zektar found himself standing in a place that shouldn't exist. The room around him was both small and infinite at the same time. The walls showed views of 17 different dimensions, each one containing a different version of reality. In some, stars burned blue instead of yellow. In others, gravity flowed upward instead of down. At the center of this impossible space sat a woman who looked completely ordinary. President Margaret Webb appeared to be in her 50s with brown hair streaked with gray and laugh lines around her blue eyes. She wore a simple business suit that could have come from any office building in the galaxy. Please sit down, Margaret said, gesturing to a chair that formed itself from nothing. I know this is all very overwhelming. Would you like some tea? Zektar sat carefully, afraid the chair might disappear. You're the leader of humanity? One of them, Margaret replied, pouring tea from a pot that hadn't been there moments before. We don't really do the whole supreme ruler thing anymore. Too much responsibility for one person, don't you think? The teacup floated gently into Zektar's hands. It was warm and smelled like flowers from his home world. How do you know what my people's tea smells like? We've been studying your cultures for centuries, Margaret said kindly. We know what makes each species comfortable. It's the least we can do for uninvited guests. Through the dimensional windows, Zektar could see the rest of the alien delegation. They were being given tours of different human facilities. Some were learning about human art and music. Others were watching demonstrations of technologies that bent reality into new shapes. "Why are you showing us all this?" Zektar asked. "Your people have kept hidden for 300 years. Why reveal yourselves now?" Margaret sipped her own tea thoughtfully. "Because the galaxy is growing up. Your people are starting to ask the right questions. Young Thais and others like her represent a new generation of galactic citizens. They're curious rather than afraid. They want to explore rather than just maintain order." She waved her hand, and the dimensional windows changed to show the Galactic Council chambers. But this wasn't a recording from the past. This was happening right now. Zektar could see his fellow council members debating, unaware that their every word was being monitored. "We've been watching the council for years," Margaret continued. "We've seen the shift from the old generation to the new. Your people are becoming ready for a different kind of relationship with us." "What kind of relationship?" Zektar asked, though part of him was afraid of the answer. "Partnership," Margaret said simply. "Not as ruler and subject, but as equals working toward common goals. The galaxy faces challenges that will require cooperation between all civilized species." The windows changed again to show images that made Zektar's blood run cold. Dark spaces between galaxies where something vast and hungry stirred. Energy, patterns that suggested intelligence on a scale that dwarfed planets. Technologies that seemed designed to consume entire star systems. "What are those things?" he whispered. "Threats from outside our local group of galaxies," Margaret explained. "Civilizations that grew in different directions than we did. Some became pure energy. Others became machines. A few became something we don't have words for. They've been expanding toward our region of space for millions of years." "How long do we have?" "About 5,000 years," Margaret said calmly. "Plenty of time to prepare if we work together." Zektar set down his teacup with shaking hands. "You're saying the entire galaxy is in danger?" "The entire local group," Margaret corrected. "Several hundred galaxies, actually. But yes, eventually they'll reach us. When they do, we'll need to be ready." "And you think the current galactic civilization isn't ready?" Margaret smiled sadly. "Your people are wonderful, Ambassador. You've built a stable society that has lasted for millennia. You've created art and music and literature that rival anything in the universe. But you've also become comfortable, safe. You've stopped pushing the boundaries of what's possible." She gestured toward the window showing the ongoing council debate. "That's changing. Young people like Thais are asking why the old restrictions exist. They want to explore and grow and learn. That's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. So, this demonstration bringing us here, showing us your power. This is all recruitment." "It's an invitation," Margaret said. "We're offering to end the isolation, to share our knowledge and technology, to help your civilizations grow beyond their current limitations. But it has to be your choice." Zektar stood up and walked to one of the dimensional windows. Through it, he could see human children playing in a park that existed in 6 dimensions simultaneously. They ran through solid objects, flew without wings, and changed colors like living rainbows. "What would happen to us, to our cultures and traditions? Nothing, unless you want it to," Margaret assured him. "We've learned that diversity makes everyone stronger. The galaxy needs Vorthan wisdom and Kepler curiosity and Titan strength. We don't want to change who you are. We want to help you become more than you ever thought possible." "And if the council refuses?" Margaret's expression grew serious. "Then we continue as we have. We protect the galaxy from the shadows and wait for you to be ready. But Ambassador, those external threats won't wait for you to feel comfortable. Ready or not, they're coming." She stood and walked to a control panel that appeared at her touch. "I'm going to send you back to your fleet now. You'll have complete records of everything you've seen and learned. Share them with the council or keep them secret. That's your choice too." "What about our ships? Our people?" "Everyone goes home. Safely," Margaret promised. "Admiral Hayes will escort you back to the boundary. Your people will have an interesting story to tell." Zektar felt the familiar tingle of a transport beam. As he began to fade from the impossible room, he asked one last question. "President Webb, Are you really human anymore? Margaret's smile was warm and sad at the same time. We're what humans chose to become when faced with an infinite universe full of wonders and terrors. We're still the same species that painted on cave walls and reached for the stars. We're just more. Minutes later, Zektar stood on his own bridge again. Around him, his crew was buzzing with excitement and fear. Through the main screen, he could see the human fleet escorting them back toward galactic space. Captain Jake Morrison watched from Aurora 7 as the alien ships crossed back over the boundary. His job would continue as it always had, maintaining the careful illusion of human isolation. But now the aliens knew the truth. What they did with that knowledge would determine the future of the galaxy. The alien expedition had come seeking answers about why no one dared cross into human space. They had found those answers and so much more. Now they carried with them the knowledge that humanity wasn't a threat to be feared, but a guardian to be grateful for. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready to accept that truth and what it meant for their future among the stars.